Before the break, we learned about the 50th anniversary of Nostra Aetate, the Vatican's official declaration that its historic animosity against Jews was wrong. One of the worst examples of that hostility was the Holocaust, when the Vatican stayed disturbingly silent, so much so that its then leader, Pope Pius XII, has sometimes been called Hitler's Pope. But according to historian Mark Riebling, that's not the whole story. Riebling's new book claims that Pius kept up good relations with Hitler for diplomatic reasons, all the while secretly plotting to kill him. Mark Riebling's new book is called Church of Spies, the Pope's Secret War Against Hitler, and he joins us from the Radio Foundation in New York. Why haven't we known about this before? After World War II, the Vatican was heavily criticized for not helping the Jews, for not attempting to overthrow Hitler. But if Pius XII knew he had done these things, why wouldn't he at least make some of them public?
Well, he didn't have to because Joseph Stalin did. Stalin said it in 1944 and again in 1946 through his propaganda outlets. And then the Pope did a very interesting thing. He actually admitted it in the Vatican's newspaper in February 1946, and we have the document corrected in his own hand, so we know that this was his actual statement. It was a very terse statement. It escaped notice in the Western press, but it's there for anyone who wants to read about it.
Now, Mark, you're also the author of a book on the FBI and the CIA, and this seems like a bit of a different direction for you. Can you tell us how you became interested in the Vatican's role in World War II?
Well, in just a few seconds, I could tell you that I was raised Catholic, and one of the things I learned in Catholic school was that the nuns had a really awesome surveillance system because they could souse me out if I said something heterodox. Then later on, while I was researching my first book, Wedge, The Secret War Between the FBI and CIA, I came across a retired spy from World War II who had been involved in penetrating the Vatican for United States intelligence in 1944 and 1945. And he told me some things which were quite interesting and led me to sort of think that this could be a quite interesting subject which hadn't been treated by historians.
The traditional narrative, as I understand it, is that Pope Pius XII was aware of the fact that the Holocaust was occurring and basically did nothing to stop it. Isn't that the traditional version?
That is a traditional version, and we certainly know that he did know about the show or the Holocaust. He had reports, and the Pope agonized over this for a number of reasons, one of which is that the German bishops advised him not to speak out, and the German military advised him not to speak out. In the first case, the German cardinals were very afraid of a schism, and in the second case, the German military resistance was afraid that it would bring scrutiny on Catholics who were already under suspicion and dissident elements. But to return to your point about the main narrative, I mean, yes, it's true that the Pope was silent, but we're always told that actions speak louder than words. And, of course, he didn't say anything, but neither did Gandhi and neither did the Dalai Lama and neither did anyone else we really regard as a moral leader at the time. So this was kind of a different conception of what the leader of the church should be than, say, the moral spokesman that we really look toward now.
And what information did you find that contradicts that traditional version of history, namely that Pius XII kind of looked the other way, that he didn't take any leadership vis-a-vis Hitler or the Nazis? And what about the historians who've just flatly condemned the Catholic Church during World War II? Did they not know that there were secret attempts being made to overthrow the Nazis?
Well, I think most reputable historians know about this. Certainly all the major critics of the Pope have acknowledged it as a footnote. They're more interested in other things. And I think that's a very natural thing, is that when stuff doesn't confirm our thesis, we look elsewhere. It's always difficult to turn up the volume on things which don't fit your paradigm, as it were. And so really, in terms of why this hasn't received attention, I think is that whose interest does it serve? It certainly doesn't serve the interest of the critics of the Pope, but the Vatican itself remains under pressure, and certainly the Catholic Church remains under surveillance in places like Cuba or China or even Russia, precisely because it's suspected of political intrigue and this kind of thing. So if the Pope said too much, other than, let's say, beyond what he said in 1946, it puts the Church in a difficult position, because they say, well, if you try to get rid of Hitler, well, who else do you try and get rid of, you know? So I think that's one of the reasons. It's neither the church nor its critics have had a vested interest. So I try just to take the historical point of view and say, well, if everything that's true and important it's a story worth telling. And actually, this is quite an adventure story. It's a very dramatic story. And so just as a story, I think it's worth pursuing. There were dozens of different schemes that were discussed. One was to hide a bomb in some flowers, which they were going to hand to Hitler at a memorial, but they couldn't get access to the bomb. At the last minute, there was a problem in the supply department, and they couldn't get the bomb. One of the ones that the Pope knew about in greatest detail was in March 1943, when, disguised as bottles of cognac, a bomb was put on Hitler's plane as it flew back from the Eastern Front. And this almost worked, but unfortunately the plane climbed to a high altitude when it was being shot at by flak from the ground. And at this higher altitude, the fuse in the plane froze, and the plane landed successfully. And then the plotters had to try and get rid of the evidence. There was a third plot which came to fruition on July 20th, 1944. 2 lumps of plastic explosive were placed in a briefcase. They were carried to Hitler's midday briefing conference by a Catholic staff officer, Klaus Schenk von Stauffenberg, and he was later played by Tom Cruise in the movie Valkyrie, which dramatized this incident. The briefcase was placed under the conference table, and Colonel Stauffenberg then said he had to take a phone call, and he left the room, and the bomb exploded, and it killed 6 or 7 people, hurled them out of the windows, and debris came raining down. Hitler was injured but survived. The conspirators said that he had the luck of the devil. He always just seemed to have this unerring instinct for knowing when there was trouble, almost like an animal could smell danger. Hitler was very elusive and wily, and the plotters just had terrible luck.
Mark Riebling is a writer on secret intelligence and the author of the new book, Church of Spies, The Pope's Secret War Against Hitler.